Yeah. And why? You know what? Money, power, temporary things that are going to go away.
All short term.
I mean, yeah.
Well, it's also there's psychological issues too, because it's like,
For sure.
it's a paradigm shift. Like being able to actually change how the world works in your head is difficult unless you give people a safe environment to do so. So that's like, again,
well, and we have people actively fighting against it. I mean, we know that big oil, their scientists realized climate change was happening 60 years ago.
Yeah.
And they immediately poured resources into propaganda for science denial, climate change denial, to keep people not changing it.
That's something I think should be illegal. It should be illegal, and like if you purposely misrepresent or put out fake science, so that you can influence the things that people think are real, you should be in jail, and all of your assets should be seized to fix what you've done.
Because that's what happened with the tobacco companies.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's literally the same thing.
And a lot of like the Koch brothers and like the sugar companies that basically made it so that our food pyramid was completely wrong. Yeah. Like all that shit should be just completely illegal. And if a company does that, I honestly, like, this is a crazy thing if we ever actually passed it, but I think that company, all of their assets should be seized by the government. They're like, anyone that was culpable in that decision should be in jail. Yeah. And then all of the assets should then be used to undo any of the harm that they did.
Completely full scale,
Yeah. That's just like, you're harming the entirety of the human race if you promote misinformation.
Well, it's so difficult because it's so integrated. I mean, the biggest single user of fossil fuels on the planet is the U.S. military, which is a global empire. I mean, it's so hard to untangle all of this.
Well, I think that if anyone who's listening and is interested in seeing like this kind of thing in a more narrative style, the Cosmos show that was put on by Neil deGrasse Tyson and the guy who put on Family Guy, Seth something.
Seth MacFarlane.
Seth MacFarlane. Yeah. So he paid for all of it. If anyone didn't, that's pretty amazing. But he literally made it so that it came back, and then asked Neil deGrasse Tyson if he would narrate it. But
it's amazing.
They go through in the United States leaded gas and why all of our gas is unleaded now. And there's a whole episode basically speaking about the scientist who did all of the research concerning that and gives an amazing narrative of what actually happened. So like he was studying a meteor to find out what was in the meteor, and he found that there was way too much lead in the meteor that it didn't make any sense, and so he knew that there was something wrong with the equipment that he was using, and so he tried to clean it, but there was still way too much lead, and so it led him to getting cleaner and cleaner and cleaner until he invented the clean room. This guy invented what we use as the clean room for all, like anything that we need super sanitary and without any impurities. Like that's for science, that's what we use. So then he found out that he got the right results, but he was like, okay, well, where's all this lead coming from? And he found out that it's from gas. And no one knew that like lead was getting put into the air, into our waters, all on our streets. And lead will
awful.
Kill you. It will destroy your brain.
It makes you less intelligent.
Exactly.
Permanently.
Yeah.
And there is no safe dosage of lead. All of the lead that you ingest in your lifetime will stay in your body until you die and make you permanently stupider.
Great.
So he recognized this and went in to write a report on it. And literally companies sent in lawyers to go and buy it off him. And he was like, no. And so they got their own counter scientists and they had a whole court collect and decide whether or not these scientists were true or not.
Jesus.
And the only reason why we have unleaded gas now is because this guy kept saying that had better science.
Principle over profits, baby.
That's evil. That's
evil.
So
that's true.
And I'm sure I'm missing something, so I would recommend going and just watching Cosmos is amazing if you want to understand a lot of these characters, like a lot of what we're talking about right now and how the world works scientifically. Cosmos is a great introduction if you guys have no idea for it. So
yeah, that's awesome. That brings up something that I was going to say just a moment ago too, is that one of the things that I think is so detrimental about Trump is that he is spreading the idea that the truth is not important.
Yeah.
He's saying whatever the fuck he wants, lying just constantly, badly, obviously, contradicting himself in mid-sentence.
Yeah.
It's like the fact that there is no respect for the truth. It's the same problem as people making counter-science, quote-unquote. Like, that should not exist.
Well, the Hannah Arendt, who's one of the great researchers on totalitarianism and fascism, she wrote this in The Origins of Totalitarianism, which is one of the prerequisites for fascism is called the permanent lie. Entering the state of the permanent lie. And, like,
Yeah.
So that's really scary.
We really need to send a message that you can't fuck with the truth. I think that's just a fundamentally important thing.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that like a lot of people are upset with postmodernism about.
Right.
And I actually was one of the things that I brought up with. There's a regular that comes to the coffee shop that I work at named Stuart, and he's a pretty dang smart guy. And he runs the largest vegan collective in like the Western Hemisphere. He does Veg Fest every year up in Seattle. But he and I were talking about this because he's part of the baby boomers, and he's always really interested in how we're thinking. And we have a lot of like these philosophical discussions. And one of the things that I brought up with him was I think that so many people are interested in the power struggle idea of postmodernism, where there's like these sets of powers that are just trying to get like basically war with each other, and that they all use their own narratives in order to fight each other. They get that conflated with the idea that there is no objective truth.
Right.
And so I think one of the difficulties right now is that Trump's using that to his advantage into this idea that there is no truth. Everyone feels as though there's just people trying to obtain some sort of power over everyone.
Right.
And the one thing that is the saving grace of science is that the studies that they do are supposed to be able to be replicated and show the same conclusions.
So that's always something that's been interesting to me about postmodernism, because I believe there is truth in that, and that there very much are sectors of power that only care about furthering their power, and they'll do anything to do it. But your response to that should not be to emulate them.
Yeah.
Like,
it's the whole idea of that. That is like one of the most pure examples of throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
Because you are like, oh, well, everyone just runs off the facts that they want. So...
Well, but see, how do you respond to a world in which, there are, these concentrations of power that'll do anything to advance their power, and that's all they care about? On one hand, you have to say, well, we have to treat them like they are that way, and so we need to fight back.
Right.
But if you then also enter their ideology, and you only care about your power...
Exactly. Right.
And you forsake your values, then you become your enemy.
Exactly.
And that's... Yeah.
And I think the fundamental not corollary, but the thing that's true that's I can't talk right now. They both have the problem where they don't value truth.
Yeah.
They just completely deny the fundamental importance of truth. And I think that's a huge mistake, because if you don't know what's true, then you're operating on false data, and then you'll make horrible decisions without even knowing it.
Yeah.
A completely irrational person who's doing everything right with bad information is still wrong a lot of the time. I mean, they can sometimes be right just by accident, but that's all it is an accident. So unless we have the actual data, then we're not going to make the correct decisions most of the time.
Yeah, it's just, we're so far down the rabbit hole now because, the only way to react to our reality rationally now is going to massively disrupt the status quo. And therefore those in power don't like it. So
yeah, I mean, I think the easiest
the status quo is their friend. They like it. They're powerful. That's why authoritarian structures of society are so fucking stupid. Because even if there's something that's for the good of the people, if it's for the bad of the rulers, you won't do it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone... It's weird to me if anyone thinks of society as just benefiting a small group. I don't think anyone would think of society, that would be the goal of society, right?
They shouldn't.
It is for those in power if it's a concentration of power.
Right, they're not thinking about society, they're thinking about manipulating large groups.
Yeah. But I think that's, in my mind, that's a fundamental characteristic of capitalism, is that those who hold the power see capitalism as a vehicle to further empower them, The management class.
The idea is too, like in capitalism, that the reason why it's working is because people are making rational decisions about what they should be buying.
Yeah, but that's never been the truth,
I know. I know. But I'm just saying the problem is that I find in this situation is that they're not using the premises, they're not trying to actually enact the premises that they base everything on.
Well, yeah, it's just a justification.
But
it's just a stated ideology to get the mass of people to buy into it, in my mind.
No, I mean, I would agree. I think that's why I think it's important. Again, it just reinforces the idea of why truth is important.
Yeah.
Because you're okay, sure, that's a premise. Is that premise true?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can create the craziest deduction you want based on premises that are the sky is green. And that whole entire thing is now makes no sense. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't exist. So why are we listening to it?
Yeah, I've seen that being a huge problem with. There's just so much information with the internet, and there's just so much data out there. Like if on Facebook, I see it the worst. There's just you can find a news article for anything.
I know.
Well, you want to talk about we were talking about education and how to teach people how to think well.
Yeah.
This is a perfect example as to why it would be, how do you select poor media? How do you say, let's not listen to that thing, let's listen to this thing? And that's where, for me, that's where my scientific tendencies bring me. It's I'm just going to go straight to the source. There's a scientific study where people got together and said this. You read that study, and then you say whether or not you think it was well done, and then you use that as your basis.
Ugh.